My name is Tony, and we're here to talk today about practical ways you can be an ally for diversity in your workplace. It was about 4 weeks ago that I got into a one-sided shouting match with former Senator Rick Santorum at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. True story. My husband and I are sitting there. I had just had my Trenta iced coffee from Starbucks, of course, and my overpriced, greasy pizza. And I hear somebody next to me say, when I'm elected president, I'm going to roll back some of the things that have allowed the gays to destroy American family life. You can imagine the spit take that I did, you know. He was giving a radio or television interview, so I let him finish. And then I said, how dare you, sir? How dare you? My husband and I and my family are sitting right here. We're just as American as you are. We're not destroying anything you have. Yeah. Well, all right, I'll take it. And it escalated. It's one side. He's a politician, so he's used to people yelling at him. He's very slick about it. You know, thank you for your vote. Okay, no. So it escalates, and I remind him of the internet meme that made his name so very, very famous. And people around us are either laughing, like you are right now, or moving away because they're afraid they're not going to get on their flight from the altercation that could happen. I tell you this story because it's an indication of the kind of America that I live in and a lot of LGBT Americans live in as well, right? I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, a very progressive city. We've had universal health care and marriage equality for many years now. And I work in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Seattle. I live in a bubble sometimes, but then people like Rick Santorum run for president, and they're given credibility, and they're given money, and they're given a platform and a stage. It's people like him, maybe not to the extreme, but people like him, and yes, they do live in Boston, they do live in Seattle, they do live in San Francisco, who think like him, that makes me think twice about coming out at work every time I start a new job, right? I'm trusting my team members, trusting my teammates. And that's where you guys come in. That's where the business comes in here. We're not here to talk about politics. We're here to talk about how you can change the conversation in your workplace. I came out to you one way. The other way I should come out to you is that I'm a Ruby developer at a Python conference. I am sorry. More Ruby developers? Okay, great. We have a lot in common, I think, our communities, so more so than differences. But the third way I'll come out to you is that I'm also a manager. I manage a team of engineers over in Boston for a company called Localytics. We do mobile analytics and marketing software for 30,000 apps in the App Store. New York Times, NHL, SoundCloud, ESPN. Our software is probably on 100% of your phones right now, running in the background. Our systems are on 2 billion devices around the world, our SDKs, and we process billions of events per day, terabytes of data streaming into our systems. We know big data, and we deal with complex systems. We just closed our Series D funding, $35 million in funding, the most to date of any Techstars Boston company. We're growing rapidly. We're one of the fastest growing startups in Boston in the country. And I've had to grow the team commensurately. The single biggest challenge of starting a company or growing a company is attracting the right kind of people to work for you. The systems we're building are so large, one engineer can't hold them in their head anymore. You probably deal with a lot of the same problems at your work. So I need people that can collaborate, people that can cross over the silos that naturally happen in a company. I need people who avoid groupthink, who offer differing opinions, who trust their coworkers enough, who share a lot of their life with them enough that they feel confident and comfortable saying, I don't think you're right about that, or I think I have a different perspective on that. That's the kind of team I need to build, and increasingly I think that means hiring a diverse workforce. Now diversity here means of all sorts, of gender, of race, of socioeconomic background, of education, of ability. Kate Hedleston, a blogger and talker on the subject, has a fantastic formula that the productivity of my team is a product of how well they work together times the sum of their individual talent. A lot of engineering departments that I've seen focus on that sum of the talent. They try to hire the most individually talented engineer they can, the person who literally wrote the book on the language that they're using, And we do hire those people at Localytics. We look for that trait, of course. The technical bar at Localytics is very, very high, as it probably is at a lot of your companies. But we don't stop there. The other trait we look for is teamwork and collaboration. How does this person work with other teams to get work done? I think the best teams are those that are made up of a diverse set of opinions. Groupthink, I'm constantly worried about this. Are we sure, everyone, that this is the direction we want to go with this project, right? There are studies done by Harvard and others that show that groups with women in them, groups with a diverse set of backgrounds, solve problems better. So we'll talk about some practical ways at Localytics we approach this problem. We think about this issue of diversity like a lot of other companies do. We wrestle with it. We're trying to do something about it. And so today is a series of anecdotes and things that we're trying at Localytics. I work for an analytics company. Of course, I'm going to measure everything that I can, right? That's my first reaction to things. You've seen companies like Google, Yahoo, Amazon, right? They'll publish their gender and ethnicity and race makeups. Unfortunately, I think this is the average, right? 18% women on their technical teams. But they've made this data public, and I love that they've done so because it makes the problem very clear, not just to their investors and to their employees, but to the hiring managers, the people where the rubber hits the road, people who make decisions about who to hire and who to promote at their company. And then they use this data, as bad as it might be, to set goals where they should be, right? Now, Localytics is growing rapidly. We've hired many, many engineers, but we don't have the resources that Google or Yahoo or Amazon does yet. And so we don't have an HR department that I can turn to, people who have done surveys like this before. And I did what a lot of good engineers do, and I went to Stack Overflow, and I see, and I searched for anybody conducting diversity surveys at work. I wanted tips and tricks. And I wanted to know how to conduct these surveys, and I found very, very little information. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what we learned through our own process. We, every year at Localytics, we have a hackathon where work stops for 3 days, and the entire company gets to focus on what they want to work on. And I thought this was a perfect occasion to gather a group of like-minded individuals at Localytics and conduct this survey. I'll talk about three of the questions we asked that I think had the most conversation about them, or people are most afraid to ask at work, in hopes that if you want to conduct a survey like this at your job, this will make it a little easier for you. We talked about ethnicity and race, gender, and GLBT affiliation. So for ethnicity and race, there are hundreds of different ethnicities and races and combinations of them, and we wanted to be inclusive. We settled on a government form called the EEO-1. How many of you have heard of this form before? Okay, a few. Companies with over 50 employees have to fill out this form to report race and ethnicity to the government. They break it down into 6 different ethnicities and races, which is very few, I understand. But we thought it would be the least controversial option to use the same government form that we would have to fill out anyway. For gender, we wanted to show that, give the indication that we're not thinking about gender in a binary way. It's not just male or female. There's other genders. Gender is an expression of who you are. It's an identity. So we made it a text box. Facebook takes the tact of, they have 51, I think, at last count, maybe even more now, genders. And kudos to them for doing that. The data scientists in you might be a little skittish at open text box. How do you normalize that? And we did have to go through every one and make sure that spelling and capitalization was the same. It wasn't so bad. And then for GLBT affiliation, this is something that Google and Yahoo and others do not report on in their official stats. We wanted to make sure to include these employees in the survey. But I also didn't want to make the data identifiable. I wanted to be able to share it with other people and not have people, because we had department as one of the columns. We didn't want people to be able to identify exactly who was who in the survey results. So we stuck with yes or no. Do you affiliate with this label, GLBT? We didn't break it down further than that. My website at the bottom, lessread.me, has the full all the survey questions that we asked if you want some inspiration on how to do this for your own job. These results, by the way, of the survey, it's what I bring to hiring manager meetings. It's what I bring when I have one-on-ones with the CEO. We talk about the results internally, and we use them to set goals for hiring. Fund. You can fund events and meetups that you think are important to the community. So in Boston, there was no meetup for LGBT engineers, and I thought there should be. So I made one called Code Pride. This is from one of the attendees. I was interested in Localytics before, but I'm way more excited now that you host Code Pride. As a hiring manager, if I don't hear this enough, I'm not doing my job. I want people to knock down our door and say, I want to come work for Localytics for a lot of different reasons, and one of them is because you host events like this. I had never run a meetup before, so again, I like doing my research. Probably a lot of you do too. And so I reached out to a group that was known in Boston for being very well organized and well run. It's a group called Women Who Code. You've probably heard of it. They have chapters all over the US. They jumped on the chance to meet with me to talk about starting Code Pride. They met me for coffee. We sat there for an hour and a half. We talked about everything from not being discouraged if only a few people show up the first time. It takes time to build a community. That was great advice, by the way. To what do you do for the first meetup? What kinds of meetups are there? And we settled on a meet and greet. I bought some pizza. At Localytics, we have beer on tap all the time, so that was easy to get people to talk, have some beers before the meetup. And there was 12 people showed up. We went around in a circle. We talked about who we are professionally, challenges we faced being LGBT in engineering and elsewhere. And it was a great success, I think. If you're interested in using the Code Pride name, happy to talk to you after this about spreading it in more cities other than Boston. But we also host outside events. So there's this thing called She Geeks Out. It's a group of self-professed geeks, and they get together to talk about geeky things once a month. It's a dinner. So they sell tickets to this dinner, and the proceeds go to Science Club for Girls, an organization in Cambridge, Mass, and in other places that gets young women involved in the STEM fields. And we had 150 women show up with a waiting list of about 50 more that wanted to come. Unfortunately, we don't have the space for that. But we bought dinner, and we bought little giveaways at the end, and we provided one of the two speakers. So our director of product, Sarah, she got up and talked to the women, and the CEO of Startup Institute in Boston came to talk. It's the right thing to do to host these events. It sends a signal to your current employees that you care about this issue. It sends a signal to the community that we're part of the community, right? But the hiring manager in me also is a little selfish here, right? I want people to come through our door. I want them to want to work at Localytics. Of the 150 women, we had 40 people write back and say they wanted to know more about our open positions. They wanted to know more about working at Localytics. That's 40 warm leads of people who want to work for me. I'm doing my job, right? Something's working. Raise this issue at work. Not everybody knows that they should care about this. If you're here, you probably know you should care about it. But the 150 other people that work at Localytics need to also know about it and care about it too. So picture this. I start in January of this year at Localytics. I don't know anybody other than my boss and my immediate coworkers. They bring us all down to Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut for our annual company meeting. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Boston. It's everything a casino should be. It's shopping, it's gambling, it's drinking, it's having fun with your coworkers. And over the course of the events, there was a town hall meeting where the CEO got up in front of us, and it was a question and answer kind of event. And I knew this was my chance. Okay, I can ask a question about diversity in front of these people that I don't know very well. This is going to be the first thing a lot of them know about me, and the only thing a lot of them know about me. So I let other people warm the crowd a little bit, ask their questions, and then I raised my hand and I asked the CEO, what is the management team doing to address diversity and the lack of it in the company? And the CEO, to his credit, said, of course they care about diversity. They know it leads to better outcomes in a business sense. They know it's the right thing to do. And then he did something I did not expect, which he gave me the microphone back and said, okay, Tony, what specifically would you do at Localytics to increase diversity? And I froze. It's a very scary thing, right? But he taught me a very important lesson that day, which is nobody needs to give you permission. You don't have to have it as part of your title in order to advocate for diversity at work. It's not part of my job description at Localytics to advocate for diversity. It's something that I care about, and others do too, so I take up the torch. They're very supportive, by the way. I mean, they're paying for me to come here, flying across the country to come talk to you about these issues. That's how much they care about it, but they want somebody to step up. They want those leaders in the company to step up and care about it too. Okay, the fourth way is to call out when you hear a racist joke or somebody use a derogatory term for women or for gay people, or they talk about Caitlyn Jenner in not nice terms, right? Call it out. Make sure that they know that you are offended by what they said. And you don't have to be a part of the group that it was directed at to say something. I came out to my college buddies freshman year of college, and they accepted me, but the thing that showed me that they accepted me, and not just accepted but celebrated me, was when they would hear somebody say, oh, no homo. Or that's so gay, right? Those were common terms back in the day when I went to college. And they would say, hey, listen, I'm offended by what you just said, right? They didn't say Tony would be offended. They were offended, and that's okay to speak out. People are afraid to do this sometimes because they're afraid of the pushback they'll get. Well, I'm not racist. I just, it's just a joke, man. Can't you take a joke? And one of the techniques I use to make this an easier conversation is, first of all, I won't do it in front of a group. If they tell the joke to a group of people, I'll wait until we're in private. I find that leads to a better discussion, less defensive. And I'll point out the specific situation. I'll say, yesterday when you told that joke, it made me feel very uncomfortable. I didn't appreciate who the joke was targeted towards. You see what I did there? I pointed out a specific situation and talked about how their behavior had an impact on me. That's a general way of giving tough feedback to somebody. That way, it's not about them being racist in general, right? It's about a specific thing they said that I didn't appreciate. So you can take that lesson and apply it to a lot of different difficult conversations you have with people. And finally, recruit. If you're doing your job along the way, right, we've talked about some ways that I like to recruit people, a more diverse workforce at work. And I have applicants ask me, what is it like to be a woman or a person of color in your engineering department? I'm the kind of person, I will be honest with them. And I'll say, look, we struggle with this like every single other company, maybe apart from Etsy, that I know about, right? But we're doing these specific things about it. We're not sitting around waiting for somebody else to do something. We're trying these different things. And I want you, if you come to work for us, I want you to join in the conversation. I want it to be part of your job here to help me make a diverse workforce. I fall into the trap where I think about myself in very binary terms, like a lot of engineers fall into this trap too, right? I was a straight A student in college. I like to think that I'm really good at my job. But this binary way of thinking either doesn't leave a lot of room for improvement. I'm great. I don't need to improve upon it. Or I'm not good at that, so I won't even try. There's too high of a startup cost, right? I think a lot of people think about diversity in this sense. I'm not good at it, so I won't try. I'll let somebody else do it. Or I'm great at it. I have nothing else to learn about it. I tend to think about my own journey more like this, a trend. I have highs and lows. Maybe I just hosted a fantastic dinner for women to get into engineering. And that's a high. Or I had a low. Maybe I didn't say something about a racist joke I overheard at work. But over time, those lows become less frequent and those highs get even higher. I encourage you to think about your diversity efforts this way. It's not hard to get started. Try something and you'll learn from it. It's the same thing we use, right, to develop our projects. It's an agile, iterative approach. How many of us build perfect systems the first time we set out to build them? Did I see a hand? No, okay. I don't, I don't, right? I need to try some things that work, get rid of the things that don't, and keep moving. Okay, back to my flight. I did get on it. I did not get kicked off, thank goodness. It was a weekend of ups and downs for us. Meeting Senator Santorum was a down, definitely. My husband and I boarded the plane in Boston married for 2 years. We boarded married, and we landed in Omaha, Nebraska, legally strangers, not married. Another down for us, right? But what gives me such great hope is that, no joke, literally less than 24 hours after we met Santorum, the Supreme Court handed down the ruling giving marriage equality across the land, right? That was a tremendous up in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places. It was the first time I felt like a full American citizen, which sounds dramatic, but it's not. I can participate in federal government incentives, right? I felt accepted and celebrated in my own country for the first time. I see a similar progressive upward path for engineering departments. It doesn't have to be this way. It didn't always used to be this way. All it takes is people like you and me to just try. Thank you. Questions, comments? Yes?
Yeah, Women Who Code is awesome. I love Elena, they're super great people. And we've worked a lot with Rainbow Push as well. And I think it's great to provide these forums where people who have similar backgrounds and the same perspective can sort of commiserate with each other and support each other.
Yep.
But that's not, to be honest about it, that's not really a model of the solution. Like, to model the solution, we need to create environments in which we have gender parity, we have the right representation of people of other backgrounds as well. Have you seen any examples of success in that vein, of modeling the environment that we want to ultimately achieve?
Are you asking about like companies that live and breathe these values and that have a diverse workforce already?
Yeah.
I think I mentioned Etsy a little bit. They've made some great strides with women specifically. I can't remember the exact numbers. I don't think they're at parity yet, but they're way closer than 18%.
Do you know specifically what they've done to achieve that?
Let me see if I can remember. I think they funded.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, I think it's okay. To be honest with you, in my experience, these the coding boot camps, like the Rails coding boot camps, I'm not sure if I think they exist for Python communities as well. Have much better parity in terms of women and people of color represented, right? Better than some of the computer science programs that I've seen out of schools. And I think Etsy funded one of those. Like they specifically funded a grant type program for people to then move out of that program and work at Etsy. It's a longer term. These are not quick. I mean, I've only been at Localytics for 7 months, so these are not quick hits. They're not like, oh, immediately tomorrow we have half women, but.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you think that parity could almost be like the wrong metric to like optimize on? That it could be like cargo culting, in the sense that like I saw like a dashboard, a diversity dashboard that was put up, and I was discussing it with my wife, and she said, they should put that on the actual like job application, because it shouldn't be like a one-way power flow essentially, where as the company we're using you, the applicant, the diverse applicant, to meet our metric goal. So do you think that maybe the parity is actually like, if we achieve parity, now we're diverse, and that maybe it's like the wrong metric per se, or it's bad to have that as the metric of diversity?
I'm trying to repeat the question.
Is parity like, could it just be that that's like a symptom of a diverse work environment, rather than like that's what will cause diversity in a team?
Parity is it's it comes out of a diverse work environment versus
like this is like you have a good like healthy like diverse work environment, this is what we want to happen, this is a good outcome, but if we optimize for this specifically, then we may kind of miss the reasons why diversity is good, and we may unintentionally create bad power structures that are, like you're tokenized, basically, for example.
Yeah, I can turn it to you guys. I don't have the answers there. That's an interesting thought.
Is it a risk, you think, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think about my friend Terrence and I went to WPI in Worcester, Massachusetts. We used to jokingly call ourselves the tokens at some of these events. Like we were the gay and the African American invited to events. Yeah, it's a risk.
But that can be an initial effect that progressively gets better. I mean, you can't have it always.
Yeah.
It can't be perfect.
But surely the point is not to have specific goals for diversity, but to have goals to remain and become more diverse. It's not like you need a numerical target, so you've got 70%
Right.
you have to embrace diversity.
Yeah, you're right. We don't set numerical targets when we talk about hiring, but I bring up the data that I do have to show that we're not where we want to be, right? We're not where we should be. Yes. Yeah.
Are you aware of any good comparisons comparing tech, like computer data stuff, to more traditional engineering fields like environmental consulting, you know, like more traditional science fields that are a little more established? Like, is this a conversation that we're having because this is a young field? And
Oh, interesting.
Industries have had that conversation already, and I mean, I'm an environmental consultant, and I know my world isn't perfect there.
Have you seen this graph by NPR
Had not.
earlier this year? I know it doesn't have everything on there, but this tracks medical school and law school and physical sciences as well. Right, and this is what I mean by in the 80s, it wasn't always this way. And there's theories about why this happened, some of which deals with how computers were marketed in the 80s to boys, right? And that's probably one of many confounding factors, I'm sure. But that's probably part of the conversation with you, right? Like, I wonder if it was always that way for some of those other disciplines. Yeah, Colin.
So, do you have any examples of like, you know, the silent majority issue? You know, if you don't realize that there's a problem, you know, empowering those people and building that awareness a little bit. I mean, if they're not here in this room, you know, besides Etsy is a really good example, and I'm going to look that up. But
Yeah.
Are you any other sort of like case studies or things that we could study or be encouraged by?
In terms of, yes, studies to encourage you, I mentioned, I didn't cite the source, but I mentioned the Harvard Business School study about diverse teams performing better at decision making. That's definitely one of them. There are also some studies about companies headed by women beating the market more than companies headed by men. And I wish I had the actual citation for you, but I'm sure that it will come up if you search for it. Those were all in the past few months. They all came out recently. Yes, in the back.
I just wanted to offer that for many years I worked for the city of Chicago.
Yep.
You know, had its challenges of various kinds, but part of the mandate, the hiring mandate there is to proportionally represent the population that's being served
Yes.
in hiring, and they just do it, no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yep.
So it's not a charged issue in the workplace in the same way, and there's just this feeling that you're part of this ecosystem that simply isn't unbalanced.
Yep.
It's a really, really good feeling. I haven't experienced that in any other work setting, and I just want to say it's really interesting.
That's great. I mean,
How you would translate that when you don't have like some person on high saying this is what you have to do, just how that happens in that context.
I'm a very collaborative leader. I don't like the on high kind of style anyway. So my style is to talk about this, raise it in casual conversation with people, make it top of mind. But I like what you said. There's also a business case for that too. I mentioned my company deals with 30,000 apps in the App Store, some of which are directed specifically at GLBT communities, some of which are directed specifically at women, right? And so you need to have people on your team that understand those communities if you're going to build the best product you can build, and if you're going to sell to them. Any more questions? This is a great conversation. Great, I'll be available outside for any more questions. Thanks everyone for coming.